This is session 1 of week 4, Introduction to Graduate Research. This particular session will have to do, as your syllabus indicates, week of September the 16th, 3 sessions. The benefits and the dangers of graduate research. How graduate research can help you. Now, I know that from time to time I will repeat points that are made in earlier lectures, and probably will follow up on some of the ideas that will be presented today. But it is necessary to reiterate some of these things, to inculcate them over and over so that all of you will remember them well. I'll try to highlight the points that I think are most important. There is much to be covered in a class like this. There is a great deal of material out there. Much could be said about graduate research. Right now I'm just sort of overviewing in general what it means to be able to go to graduate school. We're looking at the general idea of a graduate school and a graduate student. So we're looking at both aspects, and we're doing that in order better to understand our own situation at Asian Christian University and the new programs that are underway, leading all the way to the doctor's degree, the Doctor of Ministry or DMin degree. We're very excited about these degree programs, and we feel that they will be of great benefit and blessing to our brotherhood at large, and particularly to your situation in your home country. But as we will see, there might be some words of warning that are due, and we'll talk about some of the problems that can accrue from those who matriculate into classes beyond the graduate level, the postdoctoral studies about which we're speaking. And as I've said, of course, we can refer to graduate work or to postgraduate work, and it is the same idea depending upon the culture where we hail from. I'll be talking then about today the dangers, well, first of all, the benefits of graduate research. And if you will allow me, I'm going to go to my brief outline. This will not be a very long lecture, this first session. It will not last an hour by any stretch of the imagination. I'm sorry, but it's just not necessary to spend that much time. But I do want to talk about a few points and to make sure that we all understand the importance of these points. I raised the question of how graduate research can help, how it will help you. And incidentally, I was going to say a moment ago when I said the first sessions of this course deal with the general idea of graduate studies and graduate students. The second part will focus more on the nuts and bolts, as we say. That's a figure of speech, the nuts and bolts, that refers to the mechanics of how you do graduate research, the more technical aspects of graduate research. How to write papers, for example, how to explore a subject, how to do research, how to investigate a topic. We'll look more at that later on. The crime of plagiarism, and I'll talk about that later on. But right now, I want to remain for a few more sessions with the approach of the general idea of graduate work. How could it help you? And we're thinking particularly of graduate work in the area of religious studies. Well, the very first and most obvious point is it is an opportunity to obtain additional information, to obtain additional schooling from that you experienced already at the undergraduate level. If 2 years of say, preacher school work, or 2 years of junior college level work, and that is a stratification we have here in my culture. I hope you're familiar with the concept of a junior college, which is basically a 2-year college leading to, in this culture, the Associate of Arts or the AA degree. If that's helpful, how much more? The 4-year degree, the 4-year baccalaureate degree, the Bachelor of Arts degree or the Bachelor of Science degree. Well, if 4 years of study in an area can be of benefit, how much more? An additional 2 years toward the master's degree, which is typical. That may take a little bit longer, but generally around 2 years, year and a half to 2 years for the Master of Arts degree. How much more? And if 2 more years beyond the undergraduate level of graduate research is useful, how much more? Another year and a half, or in some cases 2 years toward the MDiv degree. And if that is valuable, how much more? another 2 or 3 years toward the DMin degree, the Doctor of Minister degree. So obviously, this is an obvious point. I don't have to belabor this, but gives you an opportunity to gain general knowledge you just didn't have an opportunity to gain while you were doing undergraduate research. You couldn't take all the classes you would like. Maybe you took all that were assigned, all that were required, but there might have been some elective courses that you either could have taken or not have taken that you did not get a chance to be a part of. So now you have an opportunity to go back and learn about those things. The second way graduate research can help you, it's an opportunity now for you to begin to start specializing in certain areas, to begin narrowing your focus, to narrow your focus, to make your focus more narrow than it has been in your past studies at the undergraduate level. Undergraduate work tries to give you sort of a broad perspective on the vast field of religious studies, theology, the textual studies, church history, and all those things that can be very helpful for a gospel preacher, for example, knowledge that will be of benefit. But as you continue with your research, you may find it impossible to continue to gain such a vast amount of general knowledge of the subject matters that you study. So you'll begin to narrow your focus. You'll begin to specialize in certain areas. It might be, for example, you, my brother, may be very interested in the history of Christianity after the days of the apostles, church history. And you may want to explore in depth how the many sectarian denominational bodies, religious bodies that exist in our time, originated. And you want to specialize in that particular area. Well, if you do so, you will be taking courses in that area. You will be reading a lot about that area. You will be writing papers about that area, doing all kinds of research in that area. But as you are specializing in that area, time will be taken in that area, which will necessarily, because we only have one life to live, take away time you could have otherwise spent in other areas. Now, as we specialize, we don't want to get so bogged down in one particular narrow focus that we forget about the broader picture. The broader picture has to always be present in our background understanding. The many different subjects we have studied, but we do begin to specialize more at the graduate level. You will find an area that you have special talents to pursue. Maybe your mind just works that way. Maybe you love history, and so you would naturally be a good historian of the church. We need more good church historians who are sound in the faith, who have common sense, who know their Bibles. And again, specialization should never rob away your time for Bible study. You should always continue to develop your understanding of the Word of God, which is the principal text. You will have particular interests and even needs that are peculiarly your needs. These are peculiarly yours, and you want to study those things and specialize. Another advantage to graduate research is you will have time to rethink some issues studied in the past at the undergraduate level. You may have an opportunity to refine some of the earlier things that you learned about. Now, I hope this doesn't mean that if you had a very good sound education at the bachelor's level, that now that you do graduate work, you will throw all that out and start anew. You want to build on that foundation, but at the same time, you'll have an opportunity now to begin to think more carefully about some things that you just had to sort of assume in the past. You had to just sort of take them for granted as being correct because your professor said so, your instructor said so. Now you will begin to find out more and more for yourself and to think through those issues and make them more and more personally your own understanding. Another benefit to graduate research is it helps you to become more professional in your own scholarship. It will help you to hone your skills at investigating a topic. The more you are required to look into different subjects and to write term papers about those subjects, the more you are required to read, maybe outside of your comfort zone, outside of the area that you normally would prefer to read about, the more you are required to do that, the more you will become professional in your ability to do scholarship, to be a good Christian scholar. We need sound scholars. Let me emphasize, brothers, we need sound scholars. Scholars who are sound in the faith, who who are true to the Word of God, who do not abandon their calling, but remain faithful to the Lord and to the principles of the gospel, but who at the same time will become more and more adept at being able to articulate the message for all levels of understanding out there in their audiences to whom they speak, whether to the babes in the pews who've had little education, the farmers in the field who are God's good people who are out there providing food for their family and for the community, or whether they be merchants in the stores or policemen on the beat or professionals in the office, downtown high-rises, whoever they may be, you will be able to deal with their needs because you are becoming more professional. Another benefit to graduate research is that it will help you, quite frankly, to gain, well, what we will call more impressive credentials. But this is a very tricky thing, and we must be very cautious. Because I'm going to warn about in another lecture the pride of knowledge and the pride of degrees, possessing degrees. I've known of good men, as I will show you later on, giving you some examples, who have been lost to the cause of Christ because they went off to graduate school and obtained more advanced degrees, very impressive credentials, but they lost their faith. We don't want that to happen. And yet, it can be a blessing to the church to have men who are recognized as experts in their area. For example, let me return to the example. It's just an example of one who might be interested in church history. At the graduate level, maybe you have opportunity to do more reading in that area, or term paper writing in that area. And you learn a great deal more about church history than the average preacher in the church might know about. You can be a source of information to your brothers in Christ as they ask you questions about issues and personalities and facts from the past that could be a benefit to understanding our situations in the present. And by the way, knowing the past can definitely help you be prepared to deal with the challenges of the present and of the future. You might learn then a great deal about that and gain credentials in that area. And as you write in that area, your ability to speak on the subject may begin to be recognized by others. Now, it may be that you already have a great deal of information in the subject you're interested in. Let's just say again, for example, church history. Or, let me use another example, Christian evidences, apologetics. You may have read a lot about that and know much about it. But if you only have the bachelor's degree, as important as it is to have that, and as impressive as that can be in many contexts, it might not be as much a benefit to you as you're speaking to an audience as it would be if you, for example, had the master's degree in that area. Suppose you have an MA degree now that you've earned from a reputable institution. We're wanting to make this school a sound school, but a reputable school, one with a good reputation for good academic qualifications and requirements. If you have that kind of credential, others will listen. Let me give you an example. Let's return now to the other example of scholarship I mentioned, specialization, that of Christian evidences. Suppose you have an opportunity to carry on a dialogue with an instructor from a local university who is, let me just say, for example, a scientist, maybe a biologist, who has been teaching his students that we're all the products of Darwinian evolution and that we're nothing but graduate animals. We're just advanced apes. That's all the human race is, according to this man and his teachings. And he's been upsetting the faith of many of his students, and they in turn have upset their families when they've gone home after their classroom experiences and have talked about the information they've learned from this man, the propaganda they've heard from this man. And now they're upset, and as they go to church, they don't know how to give an answer to the arguments that are made by the opposition. They cannot answer the false teachings of the evolutionists, and they are disturbed and they are upset. But let me just say, suppose you, my brother, have a master's degree in your field and you have specialized in Christian evidences, in Christian apologetics, and you are recognized in the community as one who is educated enough to know how to answer this man. And you have an opportunity to sit down and have a dialogue with this man in front of other students, maybe all of his class, and to give the reasons why we can believe creationism to be better from a scientific and philosophical point of view than evolutionism. then you might be able to save a number of souls in that class. And in the families from which those class members hail, from which they come, because they may have disturbed their own families, their loved ones and friends and neighbors. And your influence can be far-reaching because you are recognized as one who has the ability to speak in that area. Now let me say, someone might be meditating on what I just said and think to himself, but even if I don't have a master's degree or a doctor's degree in that area, I have a bachelor's degree and I've read a lot about evolution and I know how to answer the evolutionists. I think I could deal with that teacher, although that teacher may have a master's degree or even a doctor's degree in his field. Let me say again, for example, biology. Even though I can answer him, when I speak, others might not be as ready to listen because they may ask the question, well, who are you? What is your background? What are your qualifications to speak on this subject? And if you say, well, I'm a gospel preacher and my qualification is I know my Bible, well, there is some value to that, obviously, in that context of refuting the evolutionists. But it might not be as impressive as if you could say, I have a master's degree or a doctor's degree, and I have emphasized or specialized in the area of apologetics, the defense of Christian faith, and have had opportunity to study at the graduate level most intensely and most intensively these questions that are now disturbing you in this class in biology. And that's a long example I gave, but I hope it gives you some idea of what I'm speaking of. The reason why qualifications like this can help us, the reason why credentials can be good. What does the world think about us? In the end, it doesn't matter, and yet we're trying to persuade men, as Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 11, knowing therefore the terror of the Lord, we persuade men. And part of the art of persuasion is to be perceived as having the right to speak, as having the qualifications to deal with the subject. Credentials then can be of value. And yet in the end, it is the knowledge itself that matters and not the degrees at the end of one's name. Not John Smith, D-Min, D.D., Ph.D., Ph.D. I've seen names like that. Long titles at the end. Some of them can be impressive. But in the end, it's who has the truth. Who is able to speak because he's actually researched the subject. These are not totally useless, and yet in the end, we have to look at them as of relative importance. Paul the Apostle says about his own background. Now, Paul had credentials. Saul of Tarsus had been trained in all the best rabbinic training of his era, of his day. He had sat at the feet of Gamaliel, a famous instructor of the Jewish faith in Jerusalem. Paul was well read in the classics. He even knew about pagan religion and pagan philosophy. He could quote their poets. Paul was a very educated man. But he says all that, including his background as of the tribe of Benjamin and so on, and being the Hebrew of Hebrews, in Philippians 3 and verse 8, he counted as but refuse. The King James says as but dung, which is excrement or refuge of animals, refuse, for the sake of Christ. Christ matters more than all of those credentials, so he would gladly throw all of his degrees away to have Christ. So they are of relative importance, but they are not that terribly important. At the same time, it is worth it. What you're trying to do is worth it. Now I want to wind up this lecture, this first session's lecture. It took a little bit longer than I thought it would. And the next time we will look at dangers in graduate research. We just want to emphasize you have opportunity to learn more now about general knowledge at the graduate level. And you can begin to specialize in certain areas or begin to narrow your focus more than you were able to do at the undergraduate level. You will have time to rethink some subjects studied earlier, maybe refine some of your thoughts, and be better prepared to answer those who ask reasons of the hope that is in you, or 1 Peter 3:15, with meekness and fear. You can gain impressive qualifications, impressive credentials that will tell the world this man has something to say. So we do well to listen to him. Let me give you kind of analogy here. It is possible that your next door neighbor reads a great deal and he knows much more than the average person about medical science. Suppose your next door neighbor is a merchant who works in a store. Now, that's fine. He sells groceries. He sells food items to the community. That's an honorable occupation. And when he comes home at night, he reads in his books and he studies on the internet all he can learn about health issues, about the human anatomy, about diseases, medicines, and he knows more than most people in the community about that particular subject matter. And yet, he has no degree in that area. He's never been to school and been formally trained as a physician, as a medical doctor. Now, suppose you have down the road on another block a man or a woman who has in fact gone to school, medical school, and spent the necessary years in medical school to gain a degree, say the Doctor of Medicine degree, the MD degree, and also knows a great deal about the subject matter. To whom would you rather go when you get sick? To whom do you turn when you have appendicitis? Well, you might think, my neighbor's free, he doesn't charge anything, and the information he dispenses is true. But your neighbor might not have studied a particular matter he needs to know. He may have some gaps in his knowledge. He may know a lot about some things, but the very disease you have or the very problem you are experiencing, he may not know much about. Better to go to someone who has had a wide exposure of ideas in medical school. Now, we all instinctively understand that if we get sick, we'd rather go to a doctor, one who has a doctor's degree, for example, or one who's been highly trained in education in that field. But we know in the end, somebody could know a lot about the subject without having the degree. That is true. But degrees can be helpful. Credentials can be of some benefit. So they're not totally useless, but in the end, what matters is knowledge of the truth and your ability to persuade men to obey the gospel and to get right with God. Well, that's the end of this first lecture on how graduate research can help you. So let me now find a way to wire this up.